The wind came hard across the prairie that winter, the kind that cut through bone and memory alike. Eli Ward stood at the edge of his small ranch, staring out at the gray horizon where snow met sky. His horse stamped in the frozen dirt, breath rising like smoke. Inside the cabin, his infant daughter cried, a thin, tired sound that broke him more than the cold ever could. It had been 3 months since he'd buried Anna, his wife. The fever had taken her fast after childbirth, leaving Eli with a newborn, a small patch of land, and a silence he didn't know how to live with. He'd fought droughts, wolves, and debt before, but nothing made a man feel smaller than holding a baby you couldn't comfort. He'd done what he could, boiled oats, soaked bread, tried milk from the last cow that hadn't gone dry. But the baby grew weaker each week, her cries shorter, breath more shallow. Eli had ridden miles to the nearest town, searching for anyone who could help. The doctor shook his head. The midwife was gone to care for her own kin. The church women offered prayers, but little else. Now, back home, Eli sat by the fire with the baby wrapped in his coat. "Don't you quit on me, little one," he whispered, voice cracking. "You hang on. I'll find a way." The fire popped, sending a spark across the floorboards. Outside, snow began to fall, thick and soundless. Eli leaned back in his chair, exhaustion dragging at his eyes. For a long time, the only sound in the cabin was the wind and the baby's tiny breath. Then came a knock. Soft. Hesitant. Eli stiffened. No one came this far out in weather like this. He rose slowly, laid his daughter in her cradle, and crossed to the door. When he opened it, the wind nearly tore it off the hinges. A woman stood there, thin and pale, a tattered shawl pulled around her shoulders. Her boots were caked in mud and snow, her face drawn with hunger and cold. "Please," she said, voice trembling. I saw the smoke. I didn't mean to intrude." Eli blinked through the blowing snow. "You're half frozen. Get in here." She hesitated. "I don't want trouble. Only trouble you'll get is dying out there," he said, holding the door wider. She stepped inside, the warmth hitting her like a wave. Eli shut the door quick and dropped the bar. She stood near the fire, hands outstretched, trembling so bad she could hardly stand. "Name's Eli Ward," he said after a moment. "You lost." The woman swallowed hard. "Mara," she said softly. "Mara Dean. My wagon broke south of here 3 days ago. My husband," she stopped, voice catching. "He didn't make it." Eli's jaw tightened. He didn't ask more. Some things didn't need words. "Sit," he said, motioning toward the chair. "You look like you ain't eaten in days." "I haven't." He ladled stew into a bowl and set it before her. She ate slow at first, then faster, tears cutting clean lines down her cheeks. When she finished, she set the spoon down gently and looked toward the cradle near the fire. "Your baby?" He nodded. "My girl. Anna Grace. She's beautiful. Looks like her ma," he said quietly. Mara studied the tiny face, her expression softening. "She looks weak," she said gently. "She's hungry, isn't she?" Eli nodded again, jaw set tight. "Ain't been able to feed her proper since my wife passed. I've been looking for someone to help, but there ain't anyone left for miles." Mara's eyes filled. She knelt by the cradle, touching the edge with careful fingers. "I can help," she whispered. "If you'll let me." Eli stared, not sure what she meant at first, but when he saw the steadiness in her eyes, the kindness, something inside him cracked open. He turned away, breath shaking. "If you can save her, ma'am, you'd be answering every prayer I've said since winter started." Mara nodded, her face soft but sure. "Then let me." Days passed. The storm raged on, burying the world in white. Inside that little cabin, warmth returned in more ways than one. The baby grew stronger, her cheeks pinking, her cry sharper. Mara moved through the house like someone meant to be there, tending the fire, mending the torn curtains, humming songs Eli hadn't heard since before Anna died. Eli watched her quietly, uncertain what to make of the ache building in his chest. He told himself it was gratitude. Maybe it was at first. But when she smiled, when she laughed softly with the baby bundled in her arms, he felt something else, something he thought he'd buried beside his wife. One morning, as sunlight cut through the frost on the window, Mara turned and caught him staring. "What?" she said with a small smile. "Just," he cleared his throat. "Ain't been this quiet here in months. Feels strange." "Good strange." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, good strange." When the snow broke, the world came alive again. Streams ran clear, and the cattle lowed from the hills. Eli rode into town to trade, returning with supplies and news. People asked after him. Said they'd heard someone was helping him out at the ranch. He nodded but said little. Willow Creek had a way of twisting words, and he wasn't ready to share this new piece with gossip. When he returned home that evening, smoke rose from the chimney, and the sound of laughter spilled into the air. Mara sat on the porch with the baby in her lap, sunlight on her hair, humming. For a moment, Eli just sat in the saddle, watching. The ache in his chest deepened. Not painful this time, just alive. "You ride off without saying hello, Cowboy?" she called, smiling. He dismounted, grinning despite himself. Didn't want to scare off the peace. "Don't think you could if you tried." He handed her a small bag from town. "Brought something for you." She peeked inside. A fresh loaf of bread, a tin of tea, a simple ribbon. Her eyes shimmered. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." She smiled softly. "Thank you, Eli." He nodded, then looked out at the field. "You know, this place could use a hand come spring. Never met anyone who works as hard as you." She tilted her head. "That your way of a skin me to stay?" He looked at her, really looked, and saw the question behind the words. "Maybe," he said. "But only if you want to." Mara glanced down at the baby, who cooed softly. "It's been a long time since I had a place that felt like home," she said. "This one does." Eli swallowed hard. "Then maybe that's reason enough." Spring bled into summer. The ranch flourished. The baby learned to laugh, chasing butterflies through wildflowers while Mara hung laundry on the line. Eli fixed the fences, rebuilt the barn, and felt life return to his hands. They never talked about what might come next, didn't need to. It was in the quiet mornings, the shared chores, the small smiles across supper. They built something together that didn't have a name yet, but it felt steady. Real. One evening, the sky turned crimson with sunset. Eli stood at the fence, watching the herd settle, when Mara joined him, her hair loose in the breeze. "Hard to believe it's only been months," she said softly. "Feels like years. Good ones, I hope." "The best," she said, smiling. He turned to her, hat in his hands. "Mara, I ain't the kind of man who says things fancy. But I figure life's short, and I'd be a fool not to say what I mean." She looked up at him, heart pounding. "I lost everything once," he said. "Didn't think I'd ever get a second chance. But you walked into this place and brought life with you. For me, for her. I don't know what to call that except grace." Tears filled her eyes. "Eli,